Wow, it is great to see so many of you from all over the world. We've got folks from Canada, folks from the UK, folks from Germany, folks from South Africa. It's wonderful to see you all joining. Really, really excited to share this content with you today, all about tips for creating LinkedIn content and for growing your content online. Before I hand over to Xander, who is our guest from LinkedIn, who's going to talk through some of the very best tips to help you grow online, just a few housekeeping things. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded and we will send the recording to you once the webinar is finished. So you'll have that recording and you'll be able to watch it in your own time. So if anyone's worried about getting the recording, you'll be able to get it then. The chat is open throughout the webinar, so please continue to discuss what's being said with other folks who are listening in. Feel free to keep communicating in the chat. But for questions, and there will be a Q&A at the end of the webinar, please do ask all of your questions in the Q&A box. That way we can make sure we get through and answer them all. We will try to answer as many as possible. If we don't have time to answer your question, we will try and follow up with you directly via email afterwards. So please do feel free to ask away. And if we don't get time to answer your question, expect a response via email. Today, we're going to talk through some tips for LinkedIn. We're going to give you a demo of Buffer, and then we're going to do a Q&A at the end. And I think that is all you need to know before we get started today. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Xander, who is joining us from LinkedIn. Xander, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Phil, what up, though? It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you guys as well today, too. My name is Xander Van Gogh. I'm a global creator programs manager here at LinkedIn. So my job, in a sense, is to help us create content to get messaging out about how to be a better creator on LinkedIn, and also give you guys some cool stuff to be inspired around as well, too. So super excited to be here. In the vein of where everybody is saying where they're from. If you know, I said, what up, though? So I am from Detroit, Michigan. So Midwest in the house was good. Currently, I am residing here in Chicago, Illinois. But fun fact, I'm a digital nomad. So I've traveled to over 70 plus cities in the last 72 weeks. So it's a pleasure. All right, Suzanne, we see you from Columbus. You know, we'll see you in 2 weeks. I went to Michigan as well, too. So go blue. But with that, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys and super excited to get started. So Phil, over back to you.
Awesome. What a great introduction. Thank you so much, mate. So yeah, the content today, as I said, Xander's going to walk you through LinkedIn plus Buffer, why to create on LinkedIn, how to create good content on LinkedIn, and how to grow your following. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a little demo of Buffer and how it can be used to uncover a load of analytics that you need to make sure you're making the most of your content on LinkedIn. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. I think that is all the housekeeping I've got on my end. I think that's everything I needed to cover. So Xander, whenever you're ready, you can take away with the slides.
Nice. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. Real quick, for everybody that is here joining us today, I see we're almost close to 300 people that are participating. I am a very, very big person on interaction. So feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll ask questions in the Q&A, excuse me, and also feel free to leave comments in the chat as well. I try to do a good job of paying attention to both, like Diane, see you with the Michigan-based company, go blue. Mike, we see you from Provincetown, as well as Hernan from Argentina and Rochester, New York. What's good? But let's go ahead and start off and talk about content on LinkedIn. And with that being said, Phil, we can go to the next slide. And a quick question for the chat. How many of you actually post content on LinkedIn currently today? If I can just get like some yes, I do in the chat, or no, I don't. Okay, we see 3 times a week. We see, woo, a lot of yeses. We're popping off here. This is amazing. Great. So a couple key stats. And here are some reasons why, as we continue to get those yeses in, or people that are trying to. It's about 830 million or so odd people on LinkedIn, guys. So with that, there is a huge audience, over 200 companies, and all of these stats that you see here. But I think the big thing that you all should take away from understanding of why you should post on LinkedIn is that this audience is rich with individuals like all of us here in the chat. people who are, we can say, upperly mobile, people who are trying to learn to be better within their profession, within their day-to-day, but also individuals that can help introduce you to opportunity. So when coming to create on LinkedIn, we like to say that you create for opportunity as well, because you never know who really is watching, but you do know that your audience that is watching can potentially help you get better in some way, form, or fashion within your profession or within your personal career. So as we move on to the next slide, I have a few things that we can actually talk about today, which are creators, number one. So creators are the heart of what we consider to be conversations on LinkedIn. So we have so many different types of people that are coming onto the platform and sharing their professional knowledge, their experience, and also starting conversation around the things that we all are trying to learn about, whether it's how to get to the next level within our profession, within our next career step, whether it's what's trending right now within different industries and different segments across the world to allow us to be more knowledgeable, or just different tips, tricks, and hacks to allow us to be more efficient in our day-to-day lives. Influential creators, more importantly, are engaging in the world's professional community, and they're also turning to LinkedIn as a destination to share their stories and also grow their brands. Another quick question for the chat. I'm curious to know how many people are actually using it to grow a personal brand or using it for their own business. Let me know in the chat if you're doing more of personal brand side or to grow your business, or if you're doing both. Let's go to both as well too. Okay, awesome. We have a lot of people trying to grow their business on LinkedIn, which makes sense. Personal brands as well. This is awesome. We see that. So Phil, as we go to the next slide, and we start to talk about creating content on LinkedIn, here are just some key things to think about. Number one, it puts your content in front of people who can guide you, partner with you, learn from you, hire you, or work from you. So for all of my folks that said, hey, I'm there to post about my business and to help my business grow, this is why this is so important. In addition to that, it obviously helps you develop and grow your community. What I really like about it though, the community that we're talking about are individuals that we are surrounding ourselves in order to help us be better. So, you know, one thing that I grew up on that my grandmother always told me, and I'm sure many of you have heard this before, is that you're a product of the 7 people closest to you. And I think the cool thing about the audience on LinkedIn is that these are all individuals that you can aspire to be, people that you want to partner with, or more importantly, at the end of it all, individuals that can help you open your eyes to new perspectives to allow you to grow outwardly, or even like think in a sense of there's no box. So as you're thinking about creating content on LinkedIn, also it creates business opportunities for yourself. It creates those opportunities for others. And the biggest thing is that it's sparking that meaningful and timely conversations through the content that you all create. With that, we can go to the next slide as well too, Phil. And the biggest thing is like, who creates on LinkedIn? So does anybody in the chat actually consider themselves a creator? The reason I asked this question is because I've noticed that a lot of folks who create on LinkedIn, especially if they only do LinkedIn, they don't. So I'm curious to know from this group here, how many of you all actually consider yourselves creators? So we got a lot of yeses. Everyone with the audience is a creator. I see what you did there. Yes. Awesome. We have some people that said no. Okay. Maybe. Interesting. Okay. So I want to debunk a couple of things real quick. So anyone who has a story to tell and press publish at LinkedIn, we consider you a creator. You're an individual that can provide value. You're someone that has a story to tell based on your experience, and experience doesn't necessarily always lean into what I would consider to be, hey, I've been in medicine for 20 plus years, so I know all of this. The one thing that we all have experience around and are expert in is the expert of ourselves, of our own story. So as you think about that story and the things that you've been through, again, LinkedIn is a place where we all come to in order to be better in some way, whether it's in our profession, whether it's in our day-to-day, whether it's being better for opportunities for us to find for our business or for those opportunities of others. Those are all things that are very, very valuable and can add value to the ecosystem of conversation on LinkedIn. With that, again, we consider creators to be anyone who has something to say. So I know we had a bunch of yeses. We have some people that want to be, like Matthew said in the chat as well too. Carlton, I like what you did there about information provider. I like to call myself a knowledge evangelist as well too. But in the sense of it, we all consider ourselves to be creators because we do have some information that we share in order to add value to the world and to the professional economy as well. So as we move on to the next slide, and as I'm thinking about this, there are a couple different things that I want you guys to think about when creating content. 4 key pillars that we kind of focus on, and I'm going to give you a 5th one as well too as a bonus. Number 1, I think the biggest thing is to be authentic, right? And I'm sure all of you have heard this notation of being authentic, and I hear it a lot too. It's tossed around everywhere, and the biggest question that I try to ask people is like, well, what does that mean? So being authentic to me is this, and I would love to hear from anyone in the chat. If you have a definition around being authentic that is different, feel free to provide it or some insight. But authenticity is when you allow yourself to speak and to be in your most comfortable state with no regards. And that can mean a lot of things. So for example, whenever I'm posting content, I post as if I'm talking to my siblings, or I post as if I'm talking to a close friend. And with that, those are the individuals that I feel the most comfortable around to be vulnerable. So the tone of my voice tends to change. I'm usually really excited. I'm usually compassionate. I'm usually a big listener, and I ask questions in that way. So it allows me to be authentic. Additionally, there are other things you can do to show up to be authentically in your content as well, from how you appear. So as you can see, my hair right now, I just got it pressed yesterday for the first time ever. And I'm like, yo, I'm going to show up this way today just because this is who I am right now in this moment. And I want you guys to feel that. I don't want to mask myself to be something completely different or use language that's not necessarily myself or any of those matters. So when you're thinking about authenticity, I would challenge you all to think about the states where you are the most comfortable and allow that tone and allow that appearance to transfer through your content as well too. I appreciate you, Mia, with the silk press. I'm trying out here, you feel me? The other thing that I will also say to you all as well in terms of creating content on LinkedIn is to be consistent. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to post every single day, 3 times a day, but you should think about it and being in terms of a rhythm. Find a way in which your audience is going to expect to hear from you. So for some of us, it's cool for us to post every single day. For others, it's like, hey, I only have time to do it once a week, but finding that time once a week where people can expect to hear from you is also really well, but be consistent over time with how you are telling your story and how you are posting content is key. The other thing we would say is focus on quality. And the biggest thing I would say to that is always be adding value. Value, 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 value. I cannot emphasize this enough. The more value you add to the ecosystem, the more value that you get out of it as well. So in that, when you're focusing on the value, you're also focusing on the quality of the content. Again, we're all not experts of every single industry, but we all are an expert of ourselves and what we've been through. So take time to think about that and think about the lessons that you've learned. And think about the things that you've been through, because while you may not think it's a big deal, there's someone out there that's trying to get to your level, and also someone that may be going through the same thing that allows you to be relatable as well too. Another thing is experiment a lot on LinkedIn. There are so many different features. You can treat LinkedIn as you could treat Twitter if you wanted to, and just put text posts. You can do video, you can do newsletters, you can do live streams. So experiment and find out the avenue in which your audience actually likes to hear from you. Experiment and find out the features that you feel most comfortable in. And once you do that, double down on it. I tell a lot of my creators that I manage, I tell them the 70-30 rule. 70% of the content that we're going to put out is going to be our bread and butter, what we do really well. But 30%, we want to continue to try new things, because the one thing we all know about social media is that it never stays the same. 2-3 years ago, we didn't have TikTok. 5 years before that, people weren't posting content on LinkedIn. So to be an expert in social media means that you really have to experiment on the day-to-day, because things can change at a moment's notice. The last thing that I want to leave with you all in terms of thinking about how you're creating content on LinkedIn is this. Find a way to hone in on your voice to where you can still be unique and you have your own swagger, your own personality, your own unique value that you bring to the table, but also you can be very, 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 very relatable to your audience. So it's kind of like being able to walk with kings and not lose your common touch, but also be just like a person of the people. When you're able to find that unique skill set of your voice, of continuing to be yourself and be unique and add that value that only you can bring while also making it relatable to others, that's when you really are going to see your content, I think, in my opinion, really take off. So as we move on to the next slide, the next thing that I really wanted to focus on is just a few different tools that you guys should take advantage of on the basic level, right? The number one thing is, if you don't already, cut on creator mode. Please do it. Do it. For all of those that consider yourselves creator, I think this is a no-brainer. The word creator is in the name of the tool, so do that. I have a curious question. Does everyone here have creator mode cut on right now? If you do, type in yes. If you don't, type in no. Okay, let me give you some reasons of why you should. Number one, it does drive follower growth. And now there's a lot of debatability on what's more important, followers or connections. And I'll leave you with this. I love connections myself personally, and I think connections are great. What I will also say is that you want to be seen, you know? A follower can always turn into a connection at some point, and sometimes people just want to see what it is that you have to say before they take that next step and actually want to connect with you and have that conversation in the DMs that leads to meeting maybe on the phone, that leads to potentially meeting in real life, to closing that business deal for all of these individuals. But first and foremost, because it drives your follower growth, it gives you the access to be featured more across LinkedIn. So there are more opportunities to take your content, and you may see it in Discover tools, or you may see it being featured more in storylines and things of that nature, because it lets us know on our back end that, like, hey, this person is actually looking to have what they want to say put out more into the world for more people to discover them. So I would encourage you each to cut on creator mode for that way. The other big thing that it does is that it gives you access to a lot of features. Number one, it gives you access to be able to create newsletters. So if you haven't, you should cut it on for that reason, because it's a very, very powerful tool in that way. It also gives you access to live stream on the platform, and it will give you access to the more current features that are continuing to roll out, as some of you guys may have seen carousels and different things like that. So you can cut on creator mode, Julie, by going into your settings, if I'm not mistaken. And in your settings, you can cut this on by just, I think it says like turn on creator mode in the regular when you go to profile. And what I can also do, just to make sure that I'm clear and concise on this, I will leave Phil with a link for all of you all that he can also send over. Oh, Heather, you already beat me to it. Thank you. We appreciate you. And you can go through this link and you can cut on creator mode as well. So creator mode actually has just this quick question here that's in the chat. It's for individuals, for your personal profile. We don't have it necessarily for businesses yet, but it is for your personal profile. So I would encourage you all, though, to use it for your personal profile to drive people to your business. Because the one thing that happens when people see your content, and I am a firm testament of this, and a lot of my creators are as well too, they go to your profile first and they make sure you are who you are, and then they go and they check out the businesses that you have, and then that ultimately will lead growth. I've seen more creators drive more followership and engagement to their business page through their personal profile than the opposite. So definitely think about that in terms of why you should cut creator mode, why you should use your personal profile, so on and so forth. Phil, as we go to the next slide, Baron, love that you're turning on creator mode now. I want to get through a couple of basic questions that we always get in terms of when to post on LinkedIn, and just a few other things that we normally get from like basic, let's say, algo questions, or how to really take advantage of tuning into my audience, right? So when is the best time of day to post on LinkedIn? So a fun fact, and I think we all know this, is that LinkedIn is a platform where business professionals congregate, right? So when you think about the business week, Monday through Friday, right? So no brainer. During the weekdays, there's definitely more traffic. What I would say from personal experience, my audience does really, really well first thing in the morning. If I get something out on the platform anywhere between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. For whatever time zone I'm in, I usually get really good engagement because it gives it the opportunity for it to be seen throughout the day, right? In addition to that, what I will also say is that I've also posted things at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night that have also went viral. So I don't really think there's a true rhyme or reason, but I also think that there is opportunity to have the programmatic features to let your audience know, again, when we talk about consistency, of when you're going to show up. So by posting during the weekdays, finding certain times that work for your audience, I think that is a great way to think about that in terms of what time to post. In addition to that, how often should you post? Daily posting is what we consider to be optimal to maintain consistent engagement, right? So posting once a day, 3 to 5 days a week is what we consider to help you have linear growth. But also, it's important to understand how your audience engages with your content, more importantly, to really inform your posting frequency. I actually come in waves where personally, sometimes I'm posting every single day, and that includes the weekends as well. But sometimes I have lows. Like sometimes I just need a break away from posting and a break away from social to where I may be off for like 3 weeks and then come back and I'm only posting 3 times a week. But the big thing that I really try to do in terms of my content is I focus on the quality and how I'm adding value. And then once I am posting, what I tend to do is like try to find that rhythm in which people can expect to hear from me as well too. Yes. So Adriano, I see this here. When you say posting, do you include commenting on other posts? That's a little different. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in that format. Posting too much seems very Facebook-like to me. Greg, I kind of agree with you there. I will say this though. If you focus on adding value, it doesn't really matter. I have some creators who have grown, and one in particular, her name is Elizabeth Liba. If you guys don't follow her, she's great. She posts a lot about like Black history, and she considers herself to be like the Black history teacher on LinkedIn. And a lot of her posts are great. She posts anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day, but because of the value that she's adding, 2 out of the 3 of those may go viral. And what I mean by viral is that she was able to grow her followership from 0 to over 125,000 in a matter of 10 months. So there's rhyme or reason to all of it, but focus on the quality of the content more so. Am I posting too much or not? Because if the value is there, people will notice. Now, if you're doing a lot of promotion and things of that nature, that's when things get a little bit sticky, and you should think about how you want to space things out in that way. So Phil, as we go to the next slide here, I'm going to take at least one question right now from the Q&A. So I have a question from Iqbal. It says, question for Xander. Lots of rumors and some anecdotal evidence that plain text LinkedIn updates receives more likes and broader engagement than posts with videos, images, or external links. Can you tell us how the algorithm treats this? So I can't really tell you how the algorithm treats it, number one, because the algorithm changes every single day. What I will tell you from what I've seen from just like me posting, number one, and what I've seen from others and how LinkedIn audience usually digest content is this. I think in general, the LinkedIn audience is very academic in nature. And what I mean by that is that we like to read. So being able to go through something and reading tends to do a little bit better at times. What I will say though is that I've had also personal viral moments with video as well. I actually did a challenge last December to prove a point to my creators around this because they asked me the same question, and I did video every day for a month straight. And during that time, I grew by, I think, 4,000 followers. I had 3 or 4 posts that got over 250, 500,000 views, and they all were video. I think it really matters more of like where you lean in best in terms of being comfortable with your content, number one. But number two, also where you actually give off the best information. Some people do well with just writing and having those notes. Other people actually do better on camera. So figure out what makes the most sense for you, Iqbal, and then go from there. But one thing I can also say is this, is that people tend to read and they tend to go through. And that's also very helpful. I would encourage you to diversify your content because I think video is king. And at some point, we all will be converted because there's a new generation of a working class that's coming into LinkedIn as well too, and they live and die by video. So a couple other things that I wanted to touch on before we get to more Q&A. How can I effectively use hashtags? We recommend using 1 to 3 hashtags per post for optimization. If you use too many, it kind of confuses how you want the algorithm to distribute the content. So find the 3 that make the most sense and the ones that make the most sense for your posts. Hashtags that are trending on other platforms, again, they aren't always a good fit for LinkedIn. Search the hashtag and see what people are talking about around it before adding to your content as a key step. And overly heavy hashtag use may be blocked as well too, just as a key thing to think about. What type of content works best is another frequently asked questions. I would say diversify your content as much as you can. Again, the 70-30 rule, 70% of what works really well for you, 30% experiment and try different things. Also, diversifying your content types can really help you see what drives the most engagement with your audience. A lot of things are based on like analytics. A lot of things for each of you will be based off of analytics and what drives your audience best. So think about it that way. And last but not least, like try out some of the new stuff. Try out carousels, try out pictures, try links. A big thing for me, I love audio events. Audio events are great. They're like live podcasts. It gives you the ability to actually interact with your audience in real time as well too. So try all of these new features out. And Phil, we can go to the next slide here. Cool. So here are some examples of how creators are leveraging LinkedIn. As you guys can see through some of these different examples, a lot of this is we have people that are doing live streams like Natalie Rose. If you guys know her from TikTok, she's the young lady that has a new job every week and has became a viral sensation for it. But she used tons of live streams on LinkedIn and gets great engagement to introduce new people to the platform, get insights from social media experts, influencer experts as well too, and bringing that knowledge to LinkedIn. You can also see people on the platform as well here as like using video, but then also leveraging captions to explain their main message for what they want people to take away from their posts, and using video to support. Sharing articles actually is working really, really well, in my opinion, on the platform in the past year or so. And it's something that we've emphasized on it. But the key about sharing like these articles and these other thoughts from other folks is we also want you to share your perspective, what you got it from. If you're just posting an article, you're just reposting. So if you guys notice, we also have a repost feature now on LinkedIn as well, instead of sharing. But what we would encourage you all to do is to not just repost, but give us your perspective on why you reposted it. What was interesting about this article for you? What did you learn from it? What was your takeaway, in order to make sure that the audience is getting your genuine voice around what you are resharing as well too. And then if we go to the last couple of slides, Phil, excuse me. Thank you guys. So I'm gonna take a couple of questions from the chat, and then after these questions, I'm gonna pass it over to you, Phil, to go through the demonstration with Buffer, and then we'll take it from there. Is that okay, Phil?
Sure, yeah, go ahead, Xander.
Cool. So we have a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm gonna take one from Phil, from Philip Weiss. What are your thoughts and experiences with publishing a LinkedIn newsletter? So my experience publishing a LinkedIn newsletter, I've done it on the actual LinkedIn side. I haven't done one for my personal profile yet, but I like it. Newsletters give you a lot of flexibility. I've seen people use them in so many different ways. One way that I thought was really interesting, are there any podcasters in the chat, actually? If you're a podcaster, yes, okay, cool. So I've seen a ton of people who are podcasters leverage newsletters to, number one, embed their podcast to drive more traffic that way. Number two, usually if you're a podcaster, you have some type of write-up of the topic that you are hosting for the day or the individual that you are interviewing, and there's a lesson that you want them to learn. So I've seen some great podcasters like Mita Malik from Brown Table Talk. If you guys don't follow her, please do. She's leveraged it to not only embed her podcast, but also to explain more the topic that she is talking about on the podcast with her guest or with her co-host D Marshall. So I've seen it used for that. I've also seen people use it to just recap all of their content throughout the week to make sure that people have that rundown as well. And then obviously we've seen people use newsletters in the traditional ways in terms of speaking on a topic weekly or bi-weekly and giving that insight around industry trends, what they're seeing, their perspective, so on and so forth. Newsletters, to me, I think are a great way to build an audience. We have a lot of people that gain anywhere between 5, 10, 15, 20,000 subscribers within sometimes a couple of weeks, a few months. And the cool thing is that you get a couple touch points with newsletters. It reaches out to people on LinkedIn with your notifications, but then also it goes to their email as well too. So people can see you and you get more visibility. So Phil, I hope that answers your question. I have a question here from Laura. She says, what's the difference between posting and creating? I think creating is the coming up with what you want to say, and posting is just pressing publish. I think that's the biggest thing that I would say around that. There was a question in the chat earlier, though, that was talking about comments and how that actually engages. I think that's different from posting. That is where you get your audience interaction and engagement. However, comments to me is the way that you actually network efficiently on LinkedIn while also being able to grow your audience with the right people. So if I am an individual that is huge on sustainability, for instance, right? One thing that I want to do is to be in the conversations around sustainability, around those that are driving that conversation forward. It does two things. Number one, it gives me the insight to learn about what other people are talking about. And the last thing, what it also does as well, is it gives me the opportunity to connect with other people that are starting conversations in that space. So there, I can potentially collaborate with them. In addition to that, I can also find out on topics that they are talking on and leave my personal perspective that can be helpful as well. But commenting, posting, and creating, I think, are all a little bit different. And I'm gonna take one more, Phil, and I'm gonna pass it over to you. Oh, that's a question for you, Phil. When will carousel posting to LinkedIn be supported by Buffer? I'm gonna leave that for you to answer.
Sure. Do you want to answer one more, Xander, or shall I take over?
I'll see if I have one more in here. Okay. Any tips from when we are asked to post on personal account on LinkedIn? How to separate a personal and a company brand? And this is from Angela. My tip to that is this. If you are an entrepreneur, you are your brand to some degree, right? So I think like there is a separation, but you're the personality of your brand. And more importantly, you're like the personality of you. So when you're posting on your personal page, I think you have a more diverse range of topics that you can speak on. You can speak on what's happening at your company. You can speak on what you are learning. You can speak on what you're seeing, what your interests, what your hobbies are. And you have all of these different diverse formats in terms of what you are posting about. When you're posting for your company, you should stay within like the brand guidelines for your organization, will be my advice. So the things that you want to be the key messages coming from your company that you want your audience to resonate with. And then on your personal profile, leverage some of those personal anecdotes and personal pillars to drive your content, to just make the company feel more human. That allows people to go and seek that more information out of what you're posting from a brand. With that, I want to say thank you guys so much for allowing me to come in and give you guys some of this information on LinkedIn. And I'm so happy to pass this over to Phil and let him tell you more about Buffer.
Yeah, please don't go anywhere, Xander, because we will be asking a few more questions to you later on, I'm sure. And yeah, keep those questions coming in as well, folks. It's been great to read some of them. I'm really excited to do a full Q&A at the end. You had a little sneak peek of a Q&A already. I'm just going to spend the next 5 minutes just walking through how you can use Buffer and LinkedIn. Now, many of you, I'm sure pretty much all of you probably do use Buffer and LinkedIn at the moment. So we won't spend too much on the sort of basics, but I will go into some of the analytics Buffer can give you to really help you boost your LinkedIn content and to grow your following online. So this is, let me zoom in a bit. This is obviously Buffer. Many of you are familiar with this. And of course, this is Buffer Publish, where you publish and post. Now, if any of you haven't got LinkedIn connected in Buffer, it is really easy to do. If any of you aren't Buffer customers, you should know that you can connect your LinkedIn channel and 2 other channels with Buffer for free. It costs nothing to just get your first 3 channels and get started. And so to do that, you simply create your Buffer account and then click Connect a New Channel, select LinkedIn. And what will happen there is you'll just be asked whether you want to connect a LinkedIn page, which is for a business, or a LinkedIn profile for an individual. You press start connecting, and it will bring you into the LinkedIn platform and connect you in there. So that's really, really easy to do. And that's how you connect your LinkedIn channel. And then obviously the main thing you folks use Buffer and LinkedIn for is to schedule updates to LinkedIn. So that's very easy to do. One of the easiest ways to do it is to simply open up the Buffer calendar, select the time you want your post to go out, add your post. Obviously, once you start creating a post within Buffer, you have the option to post to several different channels. So LinkedIn. If I was to schedule this, it would go out to all of the channels I had connected here. Just for the sake of today, let's only post on LinkedIn. And you'll see a few options become available for us when we have the ability to schedule on LinkedIn. One of the ones that I really want to talk to you about today is Hashtag Manager. So this is a new feature that we added a few months ago, and it gives you the option to just drop in a few hashtags which are relevant to you. One of the things Xander said earlier is it is really useful to use hashtags to broaden your reach. He suggested between 1 and 3. So for example, if we were doing a post about our podcast, we could drop in a few of the hashtags that we've used for our podcast, maybe remove a couple of them so we've got the sort of magic 3 that we were after. And that just makes it really easy to add all of your hashtags without having to copy and paste them from somewhere else. You can also add in emojis and, of course, connect with Canva, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, Giphy, and Google Photos to drag and drop any of the imagery that you want within Buffer as well, which is fantastic. I will tell you in a bit how to find out which hashtags work best on LinkedIn. So we'll cover that in a bit. But before I do, I just wanted to show how campaigns work as well. So we are able to attach all of our posts to different campaigns within Buffer. And this can be really useful for reporting at the end of the month. For example, we can see how all of our posts relating to a certain launch or a certain activity or a certain campaign have performed. So for example, this post might be about LinkedIn Analytics, for example. I can categorize it there. And that way, when I'm doing my end of month reporting or just any reporting at any time, to be honest, I can go and sort my reporting by that campaign to see how those posts have performed. And again, if I wanted to repurpose this, so have this same post appear not only on LinkedIn, but on Twitter and other posts as well, I can do that. So just a really fast way to increase the sort of speed in which you publish. Now, this is all available on the free plan, but if you are a paid Buffer user or you're on our free trial, which lasts for 14 days, you'll have access to analytics. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking through analytics today because it is a really useful feature to help you basically understand how to grow your following on LinkedIn. So the first thing you'll see when you load up analytics, assuming you're either on the trial or the paid plan, is an overview of all of your different social channels and how your audience is growing overall, how your impressions are growing overall, and how your engagement is growing too. You'll see your recent posts and then like a quick overview of how each of your channels are performing. Now, the thing that I think most of you will be interested in today is the LinkedIn tab. Now, I should clarify that LinkedIn Analytics is available only for our business pages only at the moment. So it will only be available for business pages. It's not available for personal pages. But for your business page, you're going to get some really interesting insights into how your channel is performing. You'll learn sort of top level analytics about how followers are growing, how your new followers are going up or down, posts, engagement rate, clicks, some charts to see how that's performing over time. We've got this month selected so far, and then the ability to see total followers as well and see how that's growing. We can then switch to posts and have a look at how individual posts are performing too and get a summary of them. Now, what I'm going to do today, and this is something I would suggest all of you do if you either have analytics or if you don't have analytics, you should have the options to start a trial within your free Buffer account. And if you start a trial, you'll be able to get access to this immediately, and you can start playing around with it. No obligation to continue using Buffer after that trial, but it's really worth trying out. So what we can do is we can go and select, for example, this year's worth of data. So select from January 1st to today's date. And then we can see all of the posts we published this year. So we've published 100, all of our impressions, our likes. We can start to get some really interesting insights into how different posts have performed. So hashtags, we can see which hashtags we've used the most at Buffer. So we've used the small business hashtag the most. And then we can start to see how that hashtag has performed in terms of impressions and engagement rate. We can see, despite using this hashtag a lot, it's actually not garnering a huge amount of impressions for us. The best performing hashtag for us in terms of just purely impressions is Buffer, or the Ask Buffer hashtag. So maybe suggesting we should use that more often. But one of the most interesting ones I like to look at is average engagement rate. So when we use these hashtags, what's the average engagement rate on our post? We can see here that 2 hashtags, or 3 especially, but these 2 especially pop up: remote work and remote company. So for me, this is sort of telling me if I want to increase the reach of my LinkedIn channel in the future, I should start to use these sort of hashtags, add them to my hashtag manager and start dropping them into posts. We can do some more granular analysis as well and just simply look at some of the top posts we've had throughout the years. So we can see our best post in terms of impressions, our best post in terms of likes, which one has got the most comments, clicks too. So if we want to see how well we're driving people towards different pages, we can see that here. And then again, engagement rate too. And this can be really useful for us to understand basically what posts are performing well and inform our strategy throughout the next year as well. So this is really handy. I'd suggest everyone going in here and really analyzing how your posts are performing. And then the sort of, I would say cherry on the top of the cake, but this really is the most powerful feature that we have here, is the ability to get answers on how your LinkedIn channel is performing. Now, a lot of the questions that Xander was asking earlier is about, what time should I post? What type of post works best? How often should I post? That's really difficult advice to give on a grand scale. It really does differ depending on what type of account you are. But with Buffer, you actually get the ability to see what works for your channel in particular. So one of the things Xander said, for example, was that, in general, it's really good for LinkedIn channels to post during the week, Monday to Friday. However, when we look at all of Buffer's posts over the last year and what days we get the most engagement on average, we find that actually Sunday for Buffer works really well. So for us, Sunday is a day that gets a lot of engagement. Now, this is really important because if we didn't have Buffer, we didn't know this, we wouldn't know that Sunday was a great day to post. Due to this, we can inform our strategy and actually start posting more on Sunday to take advantage of that higher engagement rate. We can look back on all of the different types of posts we've published to see what type of post works really well. So we can compare article posts to simple text-based posts, and then rich simply means rich media here. So imagery, GIFs, videos, that sort of thing. And, just like Xander suggested, people like to read on LinkedIn. So it's not a surprise that our text-based posts get the best engagement. For us, those are the ones that really perform well. So an interesting one, because you might think that, focusing on video or photos would be best, but for our account in particular, it seems that text-based posts work really well. And then how often to post? I think it's quite clear that we should be publishing potentially around once a day. That seems like best practice if we have the time to do it. Buffer's also able to figure out if it is detrimental to publish more than once a day. I think this was a bit of chat about that in the webinar chat. And there is a slight reduction in engagement rate we get when we publish twice a day, but it's not at all the severe drop-off I would have expected from us publishing twice a day. So for us, this is really showing us that we're not going to see a huge drop-off when we publish twice a day. So we can continue to publishing at that sort of rate. And that's important because I think when we go through our posts as well, we can see that, in average, we're getting impressions of around 5, 6, 7,000, but we know that our followers are much higher than that. So we know we've got a follower count of 61,000. So publishing more than once a day can be really valuable for us to better understand how our audience is engaging. Now, with these analytics, you can add any of them that you like to a report and download that report and share it with your team if you ever want to do that. And you can always export all of these as a CSV as well to dig into them deeper, to really analyze your data and to look into that as well. That is everything I wanted to show you in Buffer today. This isn't a full-on demo today, so I didn't want to spend too much time in this, but I did just want to take a bit of time to talk through how Buffer can help for your LinkedIn business profiles and how Buffer works there. Okay, we are going to switch back to Q&A now. I will stop sharing my screen for now. Xander, if you're still there, I'm sure there are lots more questions that we'd love to ask you, if possible. But let me load up the Q&A just while Xander's getting back on, and I'll answer a few of the ones that are related to Buffer at the moment. So I'll go through them. So Landon here has asked, when will carousel posting to LinkedIn be supported by Buffer? So carousel posting is something we added recently for Instagram. It is not in the immediate roadmap to add to Buffer, so you won't see it within the next quarter, definitely, probably not the quarter after that. But we are always looking to improve our LinkedIn functionality, so that would be on the list eventually. As always, if you have any suggestions as things you want to add to Buffer, please do go into our request a feature form and add your request in there. That really helps us prioritize. I'll answer a few more of the Buffer related ones and then hand over a couple to Xander as well. Let's see what we've got in here. It's brilliant. There's so many questions that we've got here. It's like fantastic to see so many of you reaching out and asking. Awesome. I'm actually going to, all right, there's one more here from Carlton, which I'll answer, which is, what is the difference between Buffer Analytics and LinkedIn Analytics? Really good question, Carlton. Hopefully you got a hint of that question when I was walking through what Buffer Analytics can offer you. Obviously, in general, both are very good sources of truth. The things that Buffer is able to give you that can be really valuable is that those answers. So that ability to say, what time of day might be best for you to publish, how often should you publish, that sort of thing as well. Okay. All right, let's ask a few more questions. So Xander, have you got the Q&A open? Is there any that you're looking at in particular that you sort of really want to answer?
Yeah, I see one here from Dan Edwards. He said, what about being authentic when posting as a business? How can you give your company an authentic tone of voice when posting as an account? Or should you post as an individual first? Plus, what is the best way to get your colleagues to join in a conversation you start or share your company account content? So, okay, a couple of things. It's a loaded question there, but I'm gonna answer as best as I can. Number one, when posting as a business and how to be authentic. So my favorite social media account to follow ever was Wendy's Twitter account. I don't know if you guys ever followed it, but they were great. They clapped back. They talked a lot of cash, as we would say where I'm from. But more importantly, I think they were the pillar of authenticity. What I also would say about authenticity, though, remember something I kind of mentioned earlier, is finding the essence of where you are most comfortable. And, when we are most comfortable as individuals, I think that actually tunes in line with our morals, our values. For a lot of our organization, we have a certain culture, we have certain values that we outline in the beginning of that. So when you're posting authentically, I think as a business, the one thing you want to tune and tap into is what are those values and what is that tone of voice that you set within like your branding guidelines for your business. So for example, at LinkedIn, we're like the trusted teammate. We want to be welcoming. We want to be human. We want to come off as like an individual more so as opposed to like something that's automatic. So you'll see a lot of the things that we post are more just about human. A lot of our videos, there's a lot of people in it. It's all about seeing faces. So as you're thinking about posting authentically as a business, revert back to what are your company values? What are the morals? What is like the branding of your organization and how you want it to portray itself, and lean into that while also leaning into like trending things that are happening in society and being aware of what's going on. I think most importantly as well too. The other question in this I thought was really important. What is the best way to get your colleagues to join in a conversation you start and share your company account content? Good way to get your colleagues to join in is to like direct something towards them, like have something that is something that that they want to engage in. And then also starting a conversation with them directly, I think is the best way to do that as well. Phil, you want to take one and then I take one?
Yeah, sounds good. So there was a great question here about whether we would have, if there are any plans, this is from Landon, any plans to support conversion of LinkedIn posts into images in Remix? So yes, this is something we're looking at. We are spending a lot of time thinking about how we can help with content repurposing in 2023. So that's the ability to take a piece of content that you might be publishing on LinkedIn, for example, and then also making sure you're able to share it wherever else you might need to share it. Or, for example, you might have written a blog and being able to quickly translate that into something which you can share on LinkedIn, same with a podcast sort of thing. So we are looking at supporting that. We're going to go beyond the scope of Remix, so not just being able to sort of create an image for you, but actually be able to repurpose the full post. Can't share much more on that at the moment, but that is something we're looking in. So yeah, keep an eye out for that over the next sort of year. And then there was one other which I thought I'd just answer whilst I saw it, which was from Jenny. So Jenny asks, what are your thoughts on posting multiple times, especially with similar content? What if I post about the same article multiple times? I do think it's worth testing. So maybe run a test for 2 weeks where you start posting the same content multiple times with different text, I should always say. So never post the same post, but perhaps talk about a blog in a different way. And then go into Buffer and then measure those analytics. So see what happens when you're posting multiple posts, posting twice a day, what happens? Obviously for us in Buffer, when we were posting twice a day, we found it didn't affect our engagement rate, but it's always worth testing that for yourself to see how it works. Xander, any questions that you've seen pop up or any things you'd want to add there?
Yeah, one thing I would just add to what you just said too, I think it's about like programming as well. So when you're posting kind of like the same content multiple times, you definitely want to be weary of the consistency of potential spamming. But also, if you think about your favorite channels and your favorite shows, over time, you see some of the same reruns, right? If you watch Friends, you may watch the same Friends episode multiple times. So it's all about programming in nature. I archive a lot of content, especially on personal profiles, in order to be able to leverage this later on down the line, because just because I posted it on a Monday doesn't mean that all of my followers saw it on a Monday if I posted 2 weeks later for them to see that same content again and receive that message. So I would think about it in that way. The other question that I had here, I wanted to answer the difference between articles and newsletters. So newsletters is basically articles, but this really newsletters allows you to reach your audience, not just on LinkedIn, but in their emails as well too. So I really say like newsletters is probably the better function in my opinion, because it gives you more distribution. Phil, anything else on your end that you saw?
Yeah, I'm just starting to scroll down to, we've got so many questions here that I will warn you now, we won't be able to get through them all today. We will try and follow up with you on email. I'm just looking at some of the recent ones that have come in. So we've got a great question here, which is, are the recommended posting times Buffer's suggestions based on LinkedIn analytics? So all of that data is based off LinkedIn's data. We've got an API which pulls it into Buffer and then analyzes it for us within Buffer. So that is all your LinkedIn data. We also do the same service for some of the other social networks as well. So it's all based on your actual LinkedIn data, which is fantastic. And then there's a question from Erin, which is, are there any plans to add best time in addition to best day in the analytics answers? So it's a really good question. Should we add best time? Typically, we've decided not to do that so far. And the reason being is, one, if we added that data for most accounts, there would just typically wouldn't be enough data to do that analysis. People aren't posting on LinkedIn. Most accounts aren't posting several different hours of the day, multiple days a week. Usually people are posting once a day. So that means in average, you're not going to really see some telling data as to when the best time is to post. However, we have written some good articles on buffer.com about when we think are the best time of days to post. So you can check those out. And as always, we would encourage you to run an experiment. Run a week where you schedule all your buffer posts on LinkedIn at different times, and then look back on the week and see, okay, which of these posts got the best engagement? So for me, which of them seem best? So thanks for that question, Aaron.
Yeah, I see one here from Melissa, if you don't mind me jumping in, Phil. She says, when managing a business profile, we're getting employees to switch on creator mode and repost content from our company page, impact the visibility. It's hard to answer that question one way or another. What I can give you is a best practice around that. I think you should definitely have your employees cut on creator mode, because obviously it allows their network to understand, and allows us on the back end to understand that they want what they have to say to be heard. What I would encourage is, in reposting or resharing, have your employees share their personal perspective of why they think this is great for the company, their insight, their experience around it, so that they can have their own voice while also still promoting the company. The other thing I would say too is that, like, when your company is doing great, like, employees will want to post about it. I think that's something that you can encourage them to do, because the more their voice is heard as well, it helps them on the back end as well within their career too. So hopefully that helps.
Right. I'll answer a few of the questions which come in, which is around adding buffer analytics for LinkedIn profiles, personal profiles. So obviously at the moment they're only available for business profiles. It is something we're looking into. This is actually why me and Xander were put in touch, is because our product teams are discussing sort of all sorts of initiatives, including that initiative. So it is something we're looking into. We're being very transparent about that there. It's something we know we want to add. So, we don't exactly need lots of people to request it, because we know it's something that will be really valuable. Something we're working on, hopefully something we can launch sort of early next year, but no, not on the official roadmap at the moment. As always, our roadmap is transparent, so you can go check it out on the website if you want to. So I know that answers a lot of people's questions.
Yeah, I see one here. Do we give up
Yeah.
any functionality if we switch to creator mode? No. You actually gain functionality more than anything, so you don't give up anything. The only thing that happens actually is, I think your profile goes from connect on the homepage to follow first. But if people still request to connect with you, the other thing that happens is that they automatically follow you, so they see your content. So if you are someone, Daniel, that does business, I'll tell you why this is like really good. One thing we preach on LinkedIn is the idea of social selling, right? Which is this idea that you want to put out content for people to get familiar with you first and foremost, before you even go into the DMs and you try to pitch them on something or try to set up time for a conversation. Like, you want to make yourself human. So it's great that people can actually follow you first, hear what it is you have to say, especially when you're doing it what we consider to be a way that is easily digestible, where you're making yourself human first, talking about random trending topics, finding ways to connect with people outside of just trying to sell them potentially. So this is a really great way in order to take advantage of that as well too, for all my business owners out there.
Great point, Xander. There's been a few questions I wanted to ask you this before you had to go around sort of image size, visual size, what format people should use. Is there a best practice in terms of what sort of images work best on the platform, considering mobile and desktop? I'm interested myself. What do you think? Is there a best practice there?
Yeah, always identify for mobile first. So when you're using images, I think it's like 4.5 or 1.1 is what we normally do, because that shows up in the whole screen of the image on your phone. And then when you're doing video, we've seen that vertical actually is working a little bit better than horizontal. What I will say though is that like the quality of horizontal, if you're recording on your phone, can be a little bit better. And I think people are still used to turning their phone that way for that. But we try to say vertical format first. And then for the images, try to always use a ratio of 1:1 or 4:5 that fills the entire screen.
Great points. Well, Xander, thank you so much. I can see lots of people are having to jump off to their next calls, so we won't keep you any longer. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you sharing all of your tips with us. Again, folks, for those who joined us today, you will get an email with today's recording, so you can follow back, listen back. If there's anything you wanted to recap, please, you can go and do that. We'll send that out to you soon. And for those of you who have unanswered questions, we will try and answer them. So we will reach out via email and try and answer those for you today. But yeah, again, Xander, thank you so much for joining us.
Phil, thank you. Thank you to the Buffer team for collaborating with us and putting this together. I learned a lot about Buffer today, so I'm going to go use that. So thank you again for all your knowledge as well, too, and the rest of the Buffer team for putting this together. It was a pleasure speaking and doing this with you all.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Xander, and thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Yeah, have the wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. Thank you all for engaging so much and for asking those questions. It's really wonderful to read through them all. And yes, we'll see you again soon for another Buffer webinar.
Bye, guys. Bye.